It's been sitting in the wind and rain at a disused Victor Harbour dump and mainly used as a scratching post by cows for 20 years. But the South Australian National Trust says it is still hopeful that the state's oldest remaining colonial-built fishing boat can still be saved. The Rambler was built in Birkenhead in the 1870s. It was used as a fishing vessel in the waters at Encounter Bay, just a few kilometres away from the dump where it now sits. It was being used into the 1980s and eventually made its way to Kangaroo Island and then to Port Adelaide, where there were hopes of restoring it. But when the boatyard it was stored in was closed during the renewal of the Port Adelaide Wharf Precinct, the Rambler was donated to the National Trust and transported to what was originally intended to be its temporary home at the Waipinga dump. Over the past year, researchers from Flinders University's Maritime Archaeology program have been visiting the site to record as much information as they can.
It is a prime example of South Australian built 19th century vessel, and that's quite nice because for the last 20 years most of the ships that we have been studying from the 19th century were built in Tasmania or New South Wales, to some extent Western Australia, but very little has been done on South Australian construction. The design of the vessel and the construction of the vessel was that of an English smack. So English design, English built basically via shipwrights that would have come in. But we do know that those really early shipwrights depended heavily on indigenous knowledge for the types of trees, the properties that trees would have had in the water, but also a lot of the labor on the shipyard were indigenous laborers, right? And we've got beautiful pictures of that. So there's a lot of indigenous agency in this. It's probably the only or the earliest surviving fishing vessel in South Australia and possibly even in Australia. That's Australian built. It had a great career and it was really instrumental in, at some point, collecting the votes for this area. So it had an electoral function in that sense, and that all adds to the significance.
And so what sort of condition is it in?
It's not doing so well. It's been sitting here for a few decades now. The idea was that it was going to get covered for a while and restored to its former glory, and I think, as you can see, those days are past. We're beyond that now. It's of course sitting exposed in the sun, the rain, winter weather and so on. And think of your outdoor furniture. If it's under a roof, it lasts a lot longer than when it's completely exposed, right? And the same thing with ships. The other thing is that this area, the bow has fallen off, the stem has fallen off and the bow is really opening up. And that's probably because the cows that are in the paddock here, they just love to stand here and rub their shoulders against it. And we can see all this cow hair around the nails. And this is really their favorite rubbing spot. So that certainly doesn't help. It started its life here. It was very instrumental for the fishing industry in and around Encounter Bay for many years. And it's all part of that maritime heritage. So it makes sense it's here. Maybe not in this place, but yeah.
But could you move it now, or is it beyond?
I don't know. You could, but you have to raise the funds. And I suspect that will be too expensive.
How many years do you think it's got?
I think it'd be completely fallen into bits within 10 years, and probably within 5.
The National Trust say they plan on meeting with the City of Victor Harbour soon to talk about the Rambler's future.